And there were very interesting discussions, and they were quite interactive. This is the first Maruf event, and I find it quite successful. And I hope that in future years we'll see the impact even more, and will be more, will grow. It will grow with more participants, and there will be panels where we discuss both the problems and the solutions. This session that I'm going to moderate is called No Time to Waste. What is circular economy all about? In these 3 days, we'll talk about some problems of cities, and we'll discuss some solutions with experts and the economy side. Last week there was an important summit in New York where country leaders come together, and it was enriched by some side events. It was the Climate Week in New York. I went there as a representative of SDSN. I'm the co-chair of a university which represents this organization in Turkey. And I noticed that many topics are now on the agenda: climate change, sustainability. The whole struggle is on the agenda of local administrators, governments, NGOs. All players now have these environmental issues on their agenda. And one of the topics underlined the most during the event was, it was called by different names, but everybody stressed that it was no longer a time to discuss and to create opinions, but rather to act. There are goals and 160 sub-goals, but time is running fast before we reach those goals. So when you focus on those topics, you realize once again how important circular economy is. The panel is called No Time to Waste, so yes, I don't want to waste any more time, and I'd like to turn to our panelists. We have 5 specialists this morning, in this morning session. I will briefly introduce them, then I'll give the floor to them. First and foremost, Piotr Barczak. He has comprehensive work on this area, on the public side, in international organizations, and in many other contexts. He has worked on this issue. As you know, on our app, you can see a biography of our speakers, so you can get more detail there. But very briefly, I'd like to say a few words about Piotr as an introduction to the topic. He works on waste management at European Environment Agency, Environment Bureau. He was born in Poland. He works on the technical analysis of urban coastal areas. Then he worked in the public. He worked in the Ministry of Environment in Poland for a long time. He worked in various NGOs on similar topics. Now at the European Environment Bureau, he joined the policy team, and he works on waste management. He is in charge of the waste policies of EEB, which represents many NGOs. He's one of the specialists, so I'd like to give the floor to him.
So why about cities? Why we speak about cities? Cities, they occupy only 3% of global area, land area, but they produce over 80% of global GDP. They are responsible for 90% of innovation. They produce 50% of global waste, consume 75% of natural resources, and very important also, they generate the most of greenhouse gas emissions. This comes from the European Investment Bank. We also see here that, I lost Okay, here is good. The cities have the density and the scale. I cannot see the icon. Okay, I'll try here. Thank you. The cities have density and scale of citizens, businesses, materials, and resource flows. So there is a material to work on. Cities can connect stakeholders. Cities can lead by example. That's why what we do in networks to share and inspire the best practices. Also important that cities have their autonomy in certain policies, so can go much more ambitious than the national governments. And I will touch upon only two parts, as I said. I will touch upon reuse part, so how reverse logistics, I think, just trying to find the pointer. Oh no, sorry, yes, now it's good, okay. So how to boost reuse, repair, and the manufacturing, which is the circle of the circular economy that keeps the value the most, and how bioeconomy, so treating bio-waste, can also has a prominent role in dealing with waste and bringing back the resources. This is a picture that shows that when we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it is largely about energy production, so looking at renewable sources, but this is also about the embedded energy in products. So the energy that is needed to extract, produce, transport, sell products, and this is very often overlooked. And circular economy has the potential to reduce this 45% of greenhouse gas emissions related to products production. Our recent report shows that if we only prolong the lifetime of our smartphones by 1 year, it will equal the amount of CO2 of 1 million of cars. So if we prolong this 1 year, we could also, it equals taking off of the road 1 million cars. Reuse, I will speak about that. So reuse is very beneficial for not only for environment, but also so CO2 reduction, but also for local jobs production, jobs generation. So in local jobs, not jobs in China or elsewhere. These are local jobs because repair has to happen close to the material. It is also savings for the national government because the social security paid today for the people, unemployed people, could be then reduced. And also this is about including very often excluded people who have difficulties to find jobs on the market back to the system. And as it shows, 1/3 of goods brought to the waste collection points could be still reused. There is a lot of potential in work, in jobs creation in reuse as compared to, for example, incineration. Incineration of 10,000 tons of used goods will create 1 job. Reuse of the same amount will create almost 300 jobs. And there are examples already all over the world. The one here is in Brussels, in Stockholm, and in Copenhagen. The one in Brussels is my favorite. This is where I always buy. This jacket, by the way, comes from there also. So this is about making the second-hand products first and the preferable also. And this is the change of mentality, I understand, but all the policies of cities could also involve that. Also, this is not only about second-hand shops, but also about teaching people how to repair their own goods, the furniture if they have it broken. There are, this one comes from Barcelona, and this is a place where people can come for free and they can learn how to repair their stuff. This one is similar in Munich, Germany, and in Flanders, so north of Belgium. But now about bioeconomy and bio-waste, closing the circle of bio-waste. This is crucial as a soil application, production of compost, application in horticulture, gardens in the cities, contribution to renewable energy, because if we collect bio-waste separately, we have a lot of bio-waste that generates methane. And now, if we put it in landfill, this methane will go directly to the atmosphere. If we put it in the anaerobic digestion facilities, we can collect this biogas and feed different networks in the city, for example, mobility, buses. That happens also in many countries in Europe. There are many resources that you can look at. Our member European Composting Network has worked on that extensively. This is also jobs creation. A lot of bio-waste today is not separately collected. I'm speaking now about Europe. And we have a lot of potential to create jobs in rural areas, but also in cities, especially when we talk about anaerobic digestion and composting. But I got this data from Turkey, thanks to Tamer, and I see that on average, in the composition of waste in Turkey, you have 56% of bio-waste. So this is much more than average in Europe. So it means that the potential of dealing with bio-waste for Turkey is even larger. 31 million tons in Turkey. In Istanbul, only almost 7 million tons. Let's say half of it is bio-waste. So the potential here is crucial. And I see, I've been here in Istanbul for a couple of days already, and I see no at all separate collection. Not speaking even about paper or plastic. Yes, you have informal waste pickers, and they do a great job. The clue is to involve them more and formalize them. But what about bio-waste? This is a lost potential if it's mixed together with other waste and sent to landfill. Bio-waste also doesn't burn. This contains water. So there is no reason, it's actually a nonsense to build an incinerator that would burn mostly this low calorific wet waste. So the best way to deal with this is also the way that gives jobs, money, CO2 reduction. Which is composting and aerobic digestion. These are numbers that show how much potential in in GHG reduction we have, not only by production of biogas, but also very important by so-called carbon sequestration in soil. So to keep our soils healthy, they get more carbon thanks to the organic matter and carbon that is included in biowaste. Of course, also there is a lot of potential for green jobs. Approximately 800 tons of bio-waste will create so much value to sustain one job. So approximately in Istanbul, it is 3 million tons of bio-waste to deal with. But it has to be separately collected. And there are ways to separately collect it. Just to tell you that in Europe, we already know it. There are certain countries and regions and cities that have already in place bio-waste separate collection. But this is going to be obligatory all over European Union from 2023. Everywhere, 100% of bio-waste will have to be separately collected. And this is a law already. So yes, there are cities doing that already. The one that is very interesting is Milan, which is around 2 million people inhabitants, high-rise buildings, and they do it. They separately collect bio-waste with less than 5% impurities. And you can say, yeah, but it costs money. Well, this is not true, because as you see, treatment and disposal costs are lower if you separately collect more bio-waste. This comes with the value that you create, and you can sell your materials, not only bio-waste, but thanks to a separate collection of bio-waste, you also have cleaner plastics, paper, and other sources. So the treatment of those other streams is also cheaper, faster, and you can achieve higher value on the market by selling it. So the costs will fall down finally. While cost of collection remain more or less the same. This is thanks to optimization of collection. And there are examples also from Barcelona where over a couple of weeks, people managed to do it, to separately collect, and they, like in I think 3 months, they risen the separate collection rate of bio-waste from by 10 times, with only 1% impurities. They also collect, the separate collection rate risen from 19 to 54%. And you can say that, yeah, in Turkey it's impossible. Turkish people are not used to that. I see you're nodding. But it's not true. Turkish people live in all those cities here, and they do it. So I don't agree that Turkish people cannot separate waste. In Germany, you know better, Netherlands, Sweden, everywhere, we have Turkish people, and they do it the same as other Europeans. So yes, you can do it. It's a matter of policies and giving people the tools to do it. And one of the tools that we support very much is the so-called door-to-door collection. So it's a collection that identifies the person, the family, the household that generates waste to the bin. So this is no more bring containers, because there you cannot actually control, you cannot require so much from families that they will separately collect waste. By door-to-door, you give the incentive to separately collect to separate waste at source. And also in high-rise buildings, it happens. Here, very interesting is that for bio-waste collection, you don't need big, expensive trucks. I see in Istanbul a lot of big trucks with compressors, but this is not necessary for bio-waste. You will not compress water. So yes, this is how it goes. Bio-waste must be collected at least every second day, not once a week also, obviously. But again, those costs, additional costs in collection, will come back because of lower costs of treatment. And there are already examples around the world. There are from the cities, London circular route. There is Barcelona circular economy plan. The region of Victoria in Australia is also working on that, and many, many more countries, including New York, zero waste plan, and you can also find on Google yourself. So this is really an issue that my colleagues will speak more about cities. This is just to summarize the zero waste plan. And to be very clear, zero waste plan is not only a hype, a very fancy, concept among teenagers. No, and this is much more also than only some concept of marketing. This is a whole plan where we look at separate collection at source first. Door-to-door collection, preferably, because it works, and I could speak about this hours, but I'm happy to reply questions. Composting, recycling, reuse, repair, and deconstruction, which is deconstruction as opposed to demolition of buildings. I planned actually to speak more about construction, but I will skip. Otherwise, we can speak later after questions. Economic incentives, how to incentivize producers, but also consumers to separately collect their waste, and producers to produce the products that will last and will be repairable. Waste reduction initiatives, residual separation and research center. This is important. So if we separately collect waste already, well, we still have a certain amount of residual waste, okay? So the mixed waste. We have to create a city can create a research center to look at this waste, this mixed waste. Why some products are there? Why certain materials are still there? Is it a problem of communication or consumer or faulty product or a systemic problem? We have to look at each and every item, let's say nappies, for example, which are often in the mixed waste, why they are there, and think together with the consultation with the ministry, cities, and NGOs, producers, how we can take that item out of the residual bin. And if those policies will work, I promise the landfill will go down. We don't support landfill, but landfill is a flexible facility that can take waste or cannot or don't have to take waste. But incineration, you don't see incineration in those policies here. Incineration is a built facility that can lock in investments, waste streams, creativity also, and will not improve the situation for years to come. So yes, we have more resources on the website, including the Joint Research Center, where they built a document of over 800 pages about best practices of waste management. Also, I invite you to look at the EIB document on how to support circular cities. And I finish by linking to my next colleagues who will speak more about networks, which are also, we are network, NGO network, is that cities have this unique potential of include all different parts of society to policies of circular economy. Circular economy, as opposed to linear economy, is much more inclusive. Linear economy is the one that where we produce. We don't care so much about the disposal of waste. And that's why we have also all those social problems when informal waste pickers are suffering from. But inclusive circular economy can bring them back into the market and give social security. Cities are also a place of collaboration. And this collaboration is important, and we networks can also help you in that by catalyzing the activities, by joint funding, looking for funding together. And the EB also, with our members, we are doing that. It is advocating, because really, this is not about consumer choices. I take this plastic bag or not. No, this is about the policy, and we need to advocate. All stakeholders need to advocate at the ministry, and at the global level, also UN level, to change, to bring change policies. It is really not about only individual choices. And the talent pool. So yes, we need experts, and networks can provide those experts because we really don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are already best practices happening, proven, and checked. So let's just exchange about this. And I invite you to join different networks that are available. NGOs, cities, or my colleagues will actually follow up on that. I invite you again to our website, where we have lots of resources, in English mostly, not yet in Turkish, but I'm happy to collaborate with any Turkish NGOs or any other stakeholder to improve, boost advocacy at Turkish level also. And here is my contact details. Feel free to contact me also on Twitter and phone and email as you want. Thank you very much.
Piotr, especially keeping the time and using very in a good manner. You have triggering out the circular economy concept, and you deepened on also the solutions and in the perspective of the city solutions. Thank you so far.
I'd like to make an announcement to our participants. If you have any questions, you can send your questions through the Maruf app, because at the end of the questions, we will have a discussion. At the end of the panel, we'll have a discussion time. We'll get your questions through the app. If you haven't downloaded the app, please do and ask your questions through the app. Our next speaker is going to pick up from where Piotr left, and we'll talk about the approach of networks. I'll give the floor to Francesco.
Thanks for the very nice introduction, and thanks for Piotr to leading me to opening the way to talk about cities networks and to give a wider framework about circular economy policies. My intervention will be focusing on 2 points: how networks can support cities and local authorities in delivering circular economy policies and sustainable resource management, and which are the main levers that cities can enact to support resource neutrality and why it is important. Let's start very briefly from who I represent. ACR Plus is Association of Cities and Regions for Sustainable Resource Management. We born in 1994 when Brussels region with a few other local authorities were struggling in delivering the targets, in reaching the targets set by the first European Waste Framework Directive, and finding local solution to reach higher targets on recycling. It was at that time. Times are changing, and we changed our name in 2017. We moved from Association of Cities and Regions for Recycling and Resource Management. We skipped out the focus on recycling because the circular economy principle were calling us to an evolution, as well as the impulse we received by our city members that were calling us to move upper in the waste hierarchy, most to support them in delivering and implementing policies on waste reduction and avoidance and reuse even before recycling. Actually, we represent, we have more or less 100 members in Europe and beyond. They are mainly local and regional authorities in 23 countries. Some of them are network of municipalities, so indirectly we represent kind of over 1,000 local authorities. We are basically a technical network more than a lobby network. So as well as EEB, we work on fostering peer-to-peer exchange. We try to multiply chances of meeting between our experts and technicians in our local and regions. We develop local solutions together with them. We will talk about some of these local solutions to give you an idea about cities, which is the impact of cities' actions. We share information about legislative policy trends and technical solutions, and we build together pilot action through funded projects. We help our members to find funds and resources to deliver innovative pilot actions or to implement at a larger scale resource management local policies. Before digging a bit deeper in what cities and regions can do directly to foster sustainable resource management, I would start with an example of our action, because actually 2019 is the 25th anniversary of Facier Plus. We want to celebrate this anniversary launching, and we will make it soon in the middle of November, our campaign, More Circularity, Less Carbon. Why I'm starting this with this example? Because this is one of the classical actions we do through our network. We promote local actions of our members, and we reinforce them with a single, simple message. We state our position on resource neutrality, why it is important and why it is connected to climate change. The message here is quite simple, is resource management, moving to resource neutrality, could contribute up to a third of EU carbon footprint, according to our calculation. And mostly, the tool we will launch through our campaign, we will support our members, and whoever wants to participate to the campaign, of course, it will be open, to measure how resource management in cities has an impact on climate change. Some examples are here. We are still elaborating, and we will deliver final figures during November. But food waste and food chain value in cities have a huge impact on carbon production, as well as construction and electronic waste. Of course, plastic is playing a relevant role together, but we can't ignore also furniture and textiles as main chain values producing a lot of carbon impact. Main important part of this slide is the right column, which is not only understanding which is the problem, but supporting campaigners to understand which are the concrete actions they can deliver in order to reduce at the same time the waste of resources, an improved use of resources, a more efficient use of resources, and at the same time reduce the carbon impact they are having. I will be very short on this because Piotr was already very clear. We have a lot of similarities on looking at main pillars for circular economy. The main difference here is that we are focusing on the local authorities approach. Of course, territorial hierarchy and going local should be the priority. The multi-R approach, Piotr already went of this, so reducing waste production even before then recycling it. We will focus a bit later on the role of local and regional authorities and why they are a fundamental actor in delivering circular economy policies. Shared governance is mainly about breaking silos, both within the public administration, so supporting the dialogue between different departments. Circular economy is not only environmental policy. Circular economy has to involve educational department, mobility department, employment and training department, and business support department of public authorities. New business models is, of course, something which is less connected to public authorities, but which is very relevant, and local authorities has many tools to incentivize the impact of small business models focusing on eco-design mainly. Local authorities, why they are very relevant actors? Because they are bridges. Because they have a recognized third role which can manage and balance the different interests of different local stakeholders, because they have constant interactions with the citizens, civil society, private actors, academia, and they can put different voices together, and they have a democratic legitimacy and some direct influence. This is what we are going through. I try to go faster because I'm running out of time. Local authorities have a lot of different leverages to promote and boost the circular economy loops. They can act both on demand and supply side because they are in contact with the citizens, so they can raise awareness and promote the better behavior about resource consumption. They can act even more on the demand side with public procurement, which is estimated by the European Commission at about the 14–15% of European GDP. But they can also work on the supply side. They can work on local infrastructures. They can build a business and training support scheme. And they, mostly they can enact, we are going with a stick and carrot scheme to trivialize it a bit. They can work on fiscal framework. They can promote polluter pays principle with progressive taxation and fiscal incentives in order to punish who's producing more waste and promote better behaviors for privates and citizens. Let's start with, I will go around a few examples of local actions just to give you concrete ideas about which are the kind of policies we are supporting between our members and we want to highlight on an international arena. And let's start with an example of public procurement, but a peculiar example on public procurement. We are not talking here about huge investments on infrastructural level or on mobility. I like very much this example because it's connecting public procurement to community engagement. This is from Regione Sardegna, and it was developed through a LIFE project. And basically, it was to put a bit of order in the canteens services of the public services in Regione Sardegna. So we are talking about mainly about canteens in schools, canteens in health services like hospitals and other structures like this. It's a market of more or less 60 million euro per year. What Regione Sardegna did is not only setting up minimum environmental criteria to improve environmental performances of public procurement in the food chain value. They put together long-term stakeholder engagement strategy involving a very wide chain of stakeholders. They put together local food producer, they put together teacher, student representative, teachers representative, nurses, and all the stakeholders involved in the chain to develop, even before the minimum environmental criteria, a sustainable canteens decalogue about good, healthy, mostly local food that had a huge cultural impact even before then an economic impact on the local producer of food to be engaged in public procurement services for health and educational services. Data is another relevant point in local policy making, of course. We have a few examples here. I would highlight, because we are almost out of time, I highlight the one on the left, which is from Emulsa Gijón, which is the waste management agency in the Spanish region. In this case, collecting data about waste collection was very relevant to improve performance by one side of the waste collection system, to make it more efficient and economic by putting chips both on bins and both on truck collecting waste, so improving the routes of collection trucks and try to make it more cost effective. But by the other side, it led to building this CAS, stands for civic amenity sites, which have then become sort of stakeholder engagement places in which we will go to this on the next slide. People, and this example has already presented, realized also in Flanders, as Piotr shortly shown before, they can be a huge tool to build the community engagement on reuse. Because especially when you are talking about bulky waste and furniture, people can, when they are aware of the kind of service, when the services which are set up, they are engaging and trying to promote better behavior, they can be not only civic amenity sites, so not only places in which you go to deliver your bulky waste and furniture, but places where you can buy at a lower price new furniture for your house. So they are part of a cultural change that is going on around the European cities. Going back to datas, important to, another example which is important to highlight is the Amsterdam one on the light, in which data collection on waste production and management is not only to make services more efficient, but it is to connect with business incubators and promote sustainable startups. There are, especially in Belgium and in Netherlands, a lot of local startups working on reuse of good waste. And this is a very strong tool that local authorities can put in act to boost this shift toward sustainable business models. Some other examples, again on civic amenity sites. On waste prevention, there are also really some actions that requires a low investment but can have a good impact. In Brussels, we have the no advertisement stickers that you can put on your door not to receive commercial papers, but they are legally backed up. This is which is the difference between other tools of this side. So you can be private sending you commercial papers, they can be fined for if you expose this kind of sticker. You can have a very different kind of innovation in waste collection. In Antwerp, they have the trash tunes, which just invites people to put bins in there because they play music each time you go to deliver waste. Of course, on a wider scale, you can have more structural investment, like urbanistic regulation, especially to boost industrial symbiosis. Like a simple case, this is the only case which is not connected on waste. We are talking about Natixis, which is a huge bank, and which had an excess of hot air used to refresh their servers, and University of Paris-Marne Laval, with the local administration, just worked on have a small local urbanistic plan in order to use in this hot air to refresh the houses. We are almost there, no worries. One of the last point is coming back from local actions to how networks are important, even if they are informal. This is what happened in Italy since the middle of 2018, in which small islands started one by one to publish local laws about to stop the use of single plastic. Local plastic bans, especially on dishware and cuttleware, because they are huge receptor of tourists and they have a huge variation of population and waste production during the year. And locally, the very small island with very low political decision, they started pointedly, one by one, to develop this local regulation, but they built bottom-up a network, which is dealing now is 2019 in the national debate we are having actually in the government in Italy about how to articulate the single-use plastic ban and how it can be delivered, especially in touristic areas in Italy. Raising awareness is one of the other main tools that that public authorities have, not only them, of course. This is just an invite for you to take part in the European Week for Waste Reduction. Piotr also already said a few words about that. We are inviting citizens, small enterprises, public authorities, schools, to deliver waste reduction action and to connect them, and we connect them in a European network with an awarding ceremony each year, and we try to strengthen local actions through the power of a wider European and even beyond network. I will skip about this is just to highlight the importance of Mediterranean cooperation, not to be focused on an EU level, and we are here. Please, I know I've been through a lot of local cases that needs to be focused more, so please feel free to contact us to have wider information, and we will be happy to support you in replicating or adapting these actions to your local context.
Thank you. Evet, Francesco'dan özellikle networklerin.
Yes, we heard how networks work. We saw some examples. Francesco showed us some examples. We also had the opportunity to dwell more into the details of networks. I would like to give the floor to Marion Guénard now. He is working as an expert on circular economy in the European Environmental Bureau. He developed the circular development program for this network. He develops political recommendations, policy recommendations. He is also delivering support to various activities. I will give the floor to you, Marion, now.
It's okay, because I would like it to feel more like a conversation, and also my shoes are very uncomfortable. I will talk more, because Francesco and Piotr talked a lot about the reasoning behind the circular economy and how and why it should be framed at the local level. So I will kind of provide an overview of a management and governance model by talking about life cycle perspective to circular cities and region. Just for my own background, who has heard of life cycle analysis or life cycle management? Yeah, you're from ICLEI, so obviously. Okay, so my presentation is not completely useless. I was last week at the climate march in New York, and apart from feeling a major generation gap, and my first probably, I was also surprised to see the number of signs that were focused on waste, which is not really surprising, because probably that is the externality that is the most visible and smelly of our economic model. And I saw a lot of signs saying, this is the last plastic straw, or no more plastic bags, etc. And I've seen it all often in restaurants, etc., plastic straw being replaced by stainless steel straw. And the whole point of life cycle analysis is to say, okay, are you sure that your solution there, which is replacing a polluting solution, doesn't have impacts beyond the impacts you were initially measuring? So in the case of stainless steel straw, the extraction impacts linked to producing stainless steel straw might actually offset the impacts of a plastic straw made of recycled plastic materials. So that was just to give a bit the idea behind life cycle analysis. Just about ICLEI, if you don't know ICLEI, full name ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, is a network of over 1,750 local and regional governments across over 100 countries, and our work basically is articulated around 5 what we call pathway: low emission, nature-based, equitable, resilience, and circular development. So basically looking at climate, biodiversity, social equity, adaptation, and resources, because that's what it's about with circular development, not waste. And we are active worldwide. We have 23 offices around the world, sometimes even country offices. I have a colleague from the European Secretariat here, who you can talk after. But now to get onto the topic, so taking a life cycle approach means looking at the different stage of a value chain or of a life cycle. And I have a first question for you, well, second question. Coming back to the plastic straw thing, who is able to drink a beverage without a straw? I repeat my question because I think you did not get it. Who is able to drink something without a straw? Okay, so everybody. So you see how actually everything starts with a demand, and maybe the most sustainable solution and alternatives to plastic straw are drinking without a straw. And this may seem like an example that's not really relevant for cities, but the same narrative can apply to cities. For instance, you see a lot now in the circular economy conversation, digital technologies being used to better manage resources in their use phase. And very rarely are the impacts of the production of these digital technology or the end of life being taken into account by cities. And maybe they offset the environmental gains through these technologies. So that's one thing. First, in a life cycle approach, look at the full life cycle. And then look at the different impacts. What are the resource extraction impact, the manufacturing impact, the waste impact, the water consumption, the transport impacts. Look at the wide variety of it, the energy being used, and overall the CO2, etc. There's a wide variety of impacts to be taken into account. And now let's play around with the waste management hierarchy. Let's take a simplified version of it. Reduce, reuse, recycle, recover energy. I'm assuming most people are familiar with the hierarchy. If you look at, and let's look at the value chain of packaging, let's say. If you're burning plastic waste, let's say, and you would recover energy from it, you would erase some of the end-of-life impacts. That's fair enough. If you would recycle them, you would erase some part of the production and material extraction impact, not everything, obviously. And if you would use more reused, if you would reuse content, etc., you would offset some of the production and distribution impact. That's very simplified, I know, but just to make it quick. Now, if you would not use a plastic straw or go for zero waste store, etc., you would erase everything. That's why the waste management hierarchy is so important. And that's why it starts with the demand and with the design. So how do we support this endeavor at ICLEI through the Circular Development Program? We ask cities to look beyond the public service they provide, and most of them are responsible for, which is waste and water management, to look at the wide array of tools they have to address resource and waste issues from a systemic and value chain perspective. So from awareness campaign, which Francesco, you address, monitoring and planning tools, regulation, innovation management, public procurement, it was also mentioned several times, city-business collaboration, community involvement. Piotr made a good case for the reuse, for the potential of reuse to create local jobs and employ people who have been away from employment. So we provide a number of services, from advice on integrated waste management that look throughout sectors and actors, to city-business collaboration, to looking at how to incorporate social equity principle in circular economy plans, such as better integrating informal waste workers in local projects, circular public procurement, policies, governance, and partnership. And we also have some projects looking at the different monitoring and planning tools that can be used at the local level. But to go a bit quickly, okay, and some facts, we have over 30 circular development projects at the moment involving 115 local governments, almost everywhere in the world, and involving 44 countries. And now I wanted to get a bit more to the practice and look at what's this big concept of looking at circular economy from a life cycle perspective, look at the city level and from a very tangible approach. I draw examples from a project I'm working on with the city of Turku in southwest Finland. I'm supporting them in designing a circular economy roadmap for the region, and them and basically 17 surrounding municipalities, because they found the regional scale to be the most relevant for the circular economy. And they have already a lot of good practices in place. That span the value chain. They have circular business incubators and network. They're looking at centralizing the procurement process to bring more efficiency and circular economy criteria in their tenders. They have centralized their waste management systems at the regional level. And focus heavily on prevention, reuse, and recycling. They have a very interesting project on industrial symbiosis for chemicals called the Smart Chemistry Park. And they brought together all the regional actors of the food chain to discuss the different impacts across the value chain of food. And finally, they have a very interesting water circulation system that looks at water from the beginning to the end of the chain, and I will go a bit deeper in it. So there you see on the map Turku and the 14 surrounding municipalities. And up until 2006 in the area, every single municipality had different waterworks. And there was definitely a lack of integration between these different infrastructure, which made it very difficult to deal with disruption and supply. And all the infrastructure were also aging, and there was definitely efficiency that could be done in better harvesting rainwater and better capturing the opportunities from wastewater. And also in the surrounding marine area, there was substantial phosphorus, nitrogen, and suspended solid loads. So in 2006-2009, it was a 3-year endeavor, all these municipalities came together to design a better solution. So now they are extracting water from a river, because the water was extracted before from a river who was under threat and with a low quality. So they are extracting water from another river, and it's being treated before being absorbed as artificial groundwater, and it's used by 9 of the 14 municipalities. And the water is now really close to groundwater quality, which has really improved the outcome of the beverage and food industry in the region. Then the wastewater of all the 14 municipalities goes to, it's really hard to say Finnish words, the Kakolanmäki wastewater treatment plant, which is located underground. I visited it, it's very impressive. It's very big, in a complete urban area, but underground. And it treats the wastewater of 300,000 residents and the industrial wastewater of the area. And what's interesting with the plant is that it's energy neutral, because it's energy positive. Because there are 2 heat pumps that collects 10 times more energy than needed to run the entire wastewater treatment plant. And it's also utilizing wastewater heat to produce district heating and cooling from 90,000 households. And finally, the sludge from the wastewater treatment plant is used for biogas production, nutrient recovery, and humus production for local farmers. And also very interesting impacts, and I think, a very interesting impact to show the link between circular economy and biodiversity is that this project has allowed to diminish considerably the load in terms of phosphorus, nitrogen, suspended solid loads in the Turku marine area. So you see before the loads of the phosphorus loads of the 14 wastewater treatment plants of the different municipalities, and you see that it has been reduced by 83% between 2006 and 2018, which is pretty impressive. So what were the key success factors of this endeavor? First, obviously the collaboration between the municipalities offered them the ability to face the high upfront investment and the initial regulatory and management hurdles. And also what was kind of interesting is that they subcontracted different regional municipal companies to carry out different phases of the whole water cycle, which allowed for greater efficiency. And in their tendering process, they included some carbon neutrality criteria. So for instance, the operator of the biogas station had to demonstrate carbon neutrality across all the steps of the life cycle. And there's also a very high level of collaboration with local university. We were talking about the thriving research area in Turku, so the University of Applied Science and Turku University. So they really work with local researchers for continuous research and development, especially now they focus on climate adaptation. So you really see how circular economy and endeavor can tie together different sustainability agenda. But ultimately, the lesson learned from this is that to manage circular economy at the local level, from a life cycle perspective, you need to think about governance and partnership more than you need to think about materials. So that was it for me. Same as my colleague said, if you want more information, please feel free to come to me afterwards, and we'd be happy to explore collaboration opportunities. Thank you.
Evet, Marion da özellikle sunumun son tarafında hem atık su yönetimi ve su yönetimi bağlamında da döngüsel ekonominin önemi üzerine vurguladı. Başka bir perspektif kattı panelimize. Daha sonra bununla ilgili sizlerden de katkılar olacağına inanıyorum. Global ve Avrupa ölçeklerinden biraz daha yerlere doğru inelim istiyorum. O yüzden bugün aramızda bakanlığımızı temsilen Sadiye Bilgiç Karabulut hanımefendi var. Ben kısaca kendisini takdim etmek ve daha sonra da sözü kendisine bırakmak istiyorum. 2002 yılında Hacettepe Üniversitesi Kimya Mühendisliği bölümünden mezun olduktan sonra 2005 yılında da aynı bölümde yüksek lisansını tamamladı. 2002 yılından bu yana Çevre ve Şehircilik Bakanlığı'nda kendisi görev yapmakta. Evsel ve endüstriyel atık konularında çalışmakta olan Karabulut, 2017-2018 yılları arasında Maden Atıkları Şube Müdürlüğü yapmış ve Ağustos 2018'den itibaren de Atık İşleme Daire Başkanlığı'nı ve Mayıs 2019'dan sonra da hepimizin de çok gündeminde olan Sıfır Atık ve Atık İşleme Dairesi Başkanlığı'nı görevini yürütmekte. Sadiye Hanım, sizin de hem bizim ülkemiz olarak ve yerel olarak paylaşımlarınızı almaktan mutlu olacağız. Buyurun.
Evet, teşekkür ediyorum. Herkese merhaba.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about circular economy. Circular economy concept came to our lives in 2005 when Europe announced the circular economy package. In fact, Marion's speech and presentation ended at a very good point, because that's exactly where I would like to pick up. It was said that this is not only about water, this is not only about waste, water use, water footprint, energy efficiency, these are all included. When we look at the package, circular economy package, there are 54 actions, and it's not only about waste management. There are many important steps to take in other fields as well. And this is only possible through cooperation between different agencies. The package that was announced in 2015 had some very challenging targets even for European countries. Increasing recycling considerably was one of the targets. So what are we doing in our country when it comes to circular economy? Where are we headed? This is what I would like to talk to you about today very briefly. The reason why we are here, the main reason is city wastes, municipal wastes. But when we say circular economy, it's a very comprehensive concept. As you can see on our slides, industrial waste is a very integral part of this. In 2018, in our country, there was 3.2 million tons of industrial waste, and these were used as raw materials in different sectors. These industrial wastes, they have mineral features, cement, lime, ceramic, steel, and brick industries can use these materials as alternative raw material. And this means that they need to get less materials from elsewhere. Last year, 800,000 tons of industrial wastes were used in facilities such as cement facilities as alternative fuel. Another work of ours is the exchange of materials in industrial facilities, symbiosis exchange you can call it. We are working with a sustainable development organization, and we have an active platform at this moment. I hope that this platform will be improved in the future because we attach great importance to it. It's the same in Europe and in Turkey. What is waste? What is not waste? We're still discussing about these concepts. This is the risky side of it all. So I would like to talk to you about the concept of end of waste. Last year we carried out a study about this. As you know, European Union prepared a legislation for certain types of waste about the end of waste. As a country, we carry out such studies too, but these materials, the imports and exports procedures regarding them, and putting an end to the situation of waste, And monitoring all of these processes require working thoroughly with different institutions. This is why we demanded a project from the European Union. When this project starts, we will be able to work in detail in this field. Now let's take a look at municipal wastes. In Turkey, we have around 31.6 million tons of annual municipal waste. This is an old study. This is from 2016. There was a national action plan that was established. As you can see, recovery, recycling is at 13%, and our target for 2023 is to get this number up to 35%, and we would like to decrease the amount of landfilling to 65%. Of course, we have some landfills, wild sites actually for waste, and one of our targets for 2023 is to shut down these wild sites for wastes. Zero Waste Project, this is a hot topic on Turkey's agenda. This project was initiated in 2017. Emine Erdoğan, the wife of our first lady actually, the wife of our president, started this project, and we have come to a very good level when it comes to awareness. Our work is continuing rapidly within the context of our Zero Waste Project. We established 23,000 state buildings, including our own building in Ankara. We sort our wastes. We do not have trash bins under our desks. Organic waste is very hard to manage, so we collect them separately, and we have composting in the garden of our ministry. Of course, these are some pilot studies. These are some institution-based studies, but the number of such activities is increasing day by day, and it is very important for us that the municipalities also take part in such activities. In 2 years, 2 million citizens have been trained about zero waste issue, and we have established a zero waste information system, so we are expecting to get information and data from different sites, but unfortunately we have not had a sufficient level, an expected level of information so far. And we have had an amendment to our environmental law when we started the Zero Waste Project. This was completed at the end of 2019. And this will be completed at the end of 2019. I will be talking to you about that very soon. The environmental law amendment happened at the end of 2018 in December. So there were 3 different kinds of awareness that were created. The first one was about materials products which bring producer responsibility. We introduced a recycling share, the implementation of a recycling share for such materials. We still continue our regulation work. It's not still in effect. And the other one will start in 2020 in January, the mandatory deposit refund system. This will be a very comprehensive work for a country such as Turkey.
Önümüzdeki yılın ilk
In the first quarter of the next year, a feasibility report will be finalized. We work on the report still. We look at some examples in Europe. Deposit refund system is limited in Europe, only in some, mostly in northern countries. But maybe Germany is the only example which is close to Turkey in scale. And the charging of plastic bags in January 2019, this started in Turkey. 78% decrease in plastic bag use in Turkey has been achieved so far, which is great success. A zero waste bylaw came into effect. Of course, It's not about the technical methods of how to manage waste. As a country, we almost fully comply with the EU legislation. We don't have any gaps in our legislation. Zero waste management talks about what are the minimum requirements to have such a system. And it also has which municipality at which scale, or which building, or which hotel, airport, organized industrial zone. It talks about by which date such places are supposed to establish a system. And our topic today, by December 2020, 88 district municipalities will have shifted to the zero waste system. These are the districts of larger provinces which correspond to 37 million people in population. Cities with more than 250,000 people in population. Then certification, a zero waste certification. Places that establish a zero waste system, even if they're a building or a municipality, will be issued a certificate, a document, which is an encouraging factor. We also give technical and financial support to places which establish a zero waste system. As I said, industrial waste is not included in the zero waste system, but in the future they may be included in the system. My time is limited, so what will we do next as the ministry? First, awareness and training are important for us. Schools, at home, to housewives, to neighborhood chiefs. For them, we'll have a project next year in order to raise awareness. By January 2020, which is 6 months after the legislation came into effect, we will start issuing the zero waste certificate. When we come to that level, we will hopefully have data flowing in from more places. And by 2023, this system will be spread to the country at large. Municipality infrastructure has to be reinforced for waste management. The ministry is cooperating with İlbank, the province's bank, in order to run a project for solid waste management, for pre-treatment or biomethanization or for composting. In creating projects and constructing, we will be offering them support. This is very important for us as the ministry. Then we have some capacity development projects. Another project, one project is about solid waste, another for circular economy action plan. The directive on single-use plastics has passed, as you know. We want to work on that. And in waste treatment facilities, what kind of new techniques or reference documents can be used? We will be running, we will be working on that in near future. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. We listened about legislation and some practices in Turkey. Our next speaker is going to talk to us in a different topic, Osman Bayazit, Genç. He started his work as a professional tourist guide for many years in Düsseldorf in Germany. He continued work. He is still the general manager of his company called Agora, which he founded in the 90s. He represents many trade fairs internationally, Messe München or Lifesaver Messe, and since 2005, NY, Eurasia, He is the managing partner and the general manager. So he's going to bring a different perspective to our panel. The floor is yours. Thank you. In order to save time, I will talk here. First of all, I'd like to thank you and all organizers for such an event. It's a first, but it's very successful and it's very promising. And secondly, I think we're limited on time. I won't have a technical contribution to participants because we're trade fair organizers. We're not technical people, so I will skip over many slides. So there is not much that I can say in terms of technical facts, but I will just speak a few minutes, then wrap up so that I can leave more time for questions. Running a trade fair is important, but the significance, where does it come from? We have listened to different stakeholders today, and these stakeholders can come together in events or trade fairs. For instance, we have IFAD held in Munich, which is the largest in terms of environmental technologies. It used to be held every 3 years, but now it's held every other year because innovation is faster now. It's similar to Maruf. Stakeholders come together and they talk about current technologies, current problems, and they exchange information on technology, on information, or they exchange experience. So international trade fairs are the best environments for such exchange. I will skip over the slides because, as I said, we're not too technical. We can't contribute too much when it comes to technical details as much as other panelists did. The trade fairs are held in Munich every other year. There are similar trade fairs in other parts of the world. For instance, we hold trade fairs in China as well. They develop very fast. We think of China as a country, as one country, but it's held in 3 different cities in China. In Germany, for instance, just one city. Then we hold it in India as well, also in South Africa and South America. The reason is so that we can bring these services to the whole world. The content of the fair is producers of different environmental technologies can come together. They're all B2B. They're not consumer events. And in the trade fair, we do not only have companies that have booths, but we also have panels and different trainings. We have hundreds of sessions, so it's like a larger scale Maruf. But hopefully Maruf will reach that scale as well in future events. The figures that you see here are from our Munich event, which means it is the largest environmental technology trade fair, which brings together the whole world, the IFAD fair in Munich. In China and Africa, there are still international fairs, but when you look at the number of participants or visitors or companies or countries represented, it's the most important event in the world in environmental technologies. This is the one that we hold in Turkey. We hold it every other year because that's what the innovative cycle requires. 2015, 2017, and 2019. We started in Ankara because that was our promise to the ministry. we said we would bring this event to Turkey and hold the first edition in Ankara, and that's how we did it. 40% of the participants are international participants, so IFAD Eurasia is the most important such event of Eurasia, and the next one will be in 2021 in Istanbul. I'd like to stop here so that I can give more time to our panelists and participants to ask more questions. Thank you. We have listened to the presentations of our panelists. We're a bit late, but we started a bit late, so we can have maybe 10 minutes for questions. So we'll take your questions. The first question is a question asked to Piotr Barczak. As waste is treated, biogas and compost emerges, and these are economic benefits. Do facilities still need financial investment on top of the economic benefit of these outcoming products, and what kind of incentives could there be?
Yes, thank you for this question. It's a good question. First of all, I don't think that waste management should be a purely economic free market service. It is a service for the society, service that is necessary. So public subvention for things like that protect our health, bring back resources, there is no shame to subsidize that. And I think it should be subsidized. There are many other services that should not be subsidized, like coal industry, for example, but waste management should. But yes, so this is an overall reply that waste management should be subsidized as much as possible, including reuse centers also. But regarding bio-waste treatment, yes, it is hard to sell compost. It's true. It's especially when the artificial or mineral fertilizers are still too cheap because they are subsidized, actually, right? Then, of course, it is hard to sell. You have to sell compost at a very, very low price. Sometimes in Flanders, it is even given out for free. Everybody can come and take as much compost as they want. So there is a little economic value from composting. Biogas is better. Of course, it costs also money to separately collect waste and then to manage that, and infrastructure is not for free, but it's also much cheaper than incineration. So for me, yes, the answer is yes, it needs subsidizing, most probably. Also, it depends. In countries like Norway, Sweden, Netherlands, where the high cost of labor are very high. So in Turkey, maybe it is a bit different. I don't know the balance here, but I guess it might be different. So the low cost of labor can be lower, and the economic viability can be also better. But yes, it might need subsidizing, but there is nothing wrong in subsidizing good and preferable options. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will get another question. Maybe it could be answered by Francesco and Marion. Is there any direct relationship parameter between zero waste and circular economy? How can affect producer behavior as a consumer? For instance, usage of eco-label materials, green purchasing, etc. Could you comment, Francesco?
Please.
Oh, Marion, yes, please.
So I can take the first, maybe. Because as a network of many, many different local governments around the world, we're confronted with the fact that everybody calls the same thing differently. So zero waste is quite close to circular economy, yet it's mostly a US notion, or it grew in the US. Zero waste means that there's zero waste being landfilled or being incinerated without energy recovery, usually. Piotr, maybe you will give a different definition for Europe. Whereas circular economy has the greater ambition of focusing on the design from the beginning. So you will find different concepts with different names. In Turku, for instance, it's called resource wisdom. Sometimes it's called integrated waste management. I think, and that's was the topic of my presentation, what we need to focus is not how you call it, but the objective of it. And for me, the objective should not be, okay, let's have zero waste incinerated without energy recovery. It should be, let's reduce pressure on material extraction. I think that's a stronger goal than focusing on the waste issue. And I think that's what the circular economy was trying to do, to shift the focus away from waste and back to resources.
And on zero waste, just a joke, and engaging stakeholders, it's better to have a million people with an imperfect waste management than a handful of people with a very good zero waste management. So this is about impact. About private stakeholders, I'm really following up to what the concept that Piotr was opening, and in Europe we have a lot of voluntary schemes involving private stakeholders, and these are dealing with the deposit refund system and other local solutions that can improve a lot effectiveness of collection systems, of separated collection systems. We are having last week it was signed and published the Circular Plastic Alliance involving more than 100 different public and private stakeholders around Europe to set ambitious standards on recycling rates of plastic materials for new products. It is still a very evolving field. It's very much based on voluntary schemes, and it's true, I totally agree with Piotr, we are talking about when we come to waste management, to public services a lot, and probably the step that we can work on more and we can push on more is not only engaging on a voluntary base private stakeholders, but also start to set mandatory levels of usage of recycled materials for new production for private stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco. Evet, bir başka soruyu da ekrana yansıtalım.
Okay, let's see another question on the screen. I would like to combine another question. Sadiye Hanım, this question is for you. Biodegradable wastes, there is 17 million tons of it in Turkey. What kind of work is there in Turkey in order to make facilities widespread to treat them? Another question, recycling rates in our country are low, but still we import waste from other countries. Why is that? These are the two questions that I would like to ask you. Yes, I talked about it in my presentation. As the ministry, we have started the solid waste program along with İLBANK. Half of it is going to be met by İLBANK loans, and 20% of it will be grants. So we are supporting municipalities to make this investment. But there are very different dynamics when it comes to the management of biodegradable waste. One of them is, we talked about incentives before. There was a question about that, about the management of biodegradable wastes. It's not easy. The sales of compost or the product that you get out of it, fermented product, if it's biomethanization, so their sales and their use is not easy at all. The Ministry of Agriculture has reserves about this. I'm talking specifically about Turkey here. And on the other hand, the Ministry of Energy has a renewable energy policy, and they provide an incentive mechanism. And sanitary landfills or wild sites included. So facilities that get energy out of storage gas get incentives from the Ministry of Environment. And the amount of that incentive is the same if you get composting or if you get fermented products out of that gas. If you generate electricity, it's the same. So municipalities, they do not want to invest in this area. This is the situation in Turkey. We have had negotiations with the Ministry of Energy, and at this point, they are working on an amendment to the legislation, to the regulations. This incentive can be removed stage by stage for certain methods. We are conducting this work along with the Ministry of Energy at this moment. I think this work is very important because if municipalities, they get the same amount of incentive, then they wouldn't invest in biodegradable waste. And they wouldn't want to deal with a product that's hard to manage. We cannot expect them to do that. Why do we have low rates of recycling? Well, this is one of the most important reasons, because the biggest piece of the cake is biodegradable waste to be used in recycling. When it comes to plastic waste, our recycling rate is low, and the imports of plastic waste is only allowed if that waste is going to be recycled. If that waste is going to go to landfills or incineration, then they're not imported. This is the reality when it comes to our legislation. Therefore, it is not very logical to import waste and then send it to landfills. I don't have the numbers, the figures with me, so I can't share them with you, but if you email me later, I will get information from the relative general directorate or the ministry, and I can send that information to you. Thank you very much, Ms. Sadiye. There are a lot of questions for you. I can't ask all of them to you, but you have seen her, you have met her, you can ask your questions directly to her afterwards. Now, I would like to get a question for Osman Bey. The participation in environmental fairs in Turkey has decreased a lot in recent years, both on the side of companies and individual visitors. What are the reasons behind this, do you think? Well, thank you very much for this question. This is not the case for our fair, but in the last 5 years, we can see that the international participation and the number of visitors has decreased in Turkey. In Ankara, we organize our fair in a small fair. I mean, the first fair that we organized was in a small physical area. That's why we moved our fair to Istanbul, to a bigger area. And in 2017 and in 2019, we had to use all of the halls of the fair, of the exhibition hall. This is the case for our fair, but there is a reduction by 60% in international participation in all fairs. There is a fair in Germany, for example. We represent this fair. We started representing this fair 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the number of participants from Turkey was 25 companies, but last year in Munich, there were 100 companies, 100 Turkish companies. So there's no problem in terms of environmental technologies. There is another fair in Turkey that takes place every year, and we know that the level of participation is low, but there are different reasons behind it, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
The question and reply by the ministry and a bit complete my reply about bio-waste. It is very important to see the bio-waste not only through the perspective of how much benefits in terms of value we can get through compost and gas, but we have to look at how much cleaner, thanks to separate collection, will be all other materials. Paper will be clean, easy to recycle. Plastic will be clean, easy to recycle. So this is very important to see the benefits, the cost savings from other parts. And optimization also of the infrastructure for bio-waste management. It does not have to be a big centralized composting plant. or a big anaerobic digestion. It might be decentralized local community composters. And that is also what is happening in a couple of cities in Europe. And it drastically reduced the cost of transport. And the compost is used on the spot also by local horticulture producers or also for forestry. I know that there is a lot of forest being planted in the region of Marmara too. So all of them, they need compost. So there should be also procurement between those organizations that plant trees and the procurement to buy the compost ready. So yeah, that's just a compliment. Thank you.
Thank you. Evet, döngüsel ekonomi konuştuğumuz bu oturumun
Okay, we have come to the end of this panel where we discussed circular economy. As I said in the beginning of this panel, we need to move all together. We need to take action all together, and all of us, every actor, has a role to play. As SDSN, we are following the performances of countries at a global level in terms of SDGs, what have done, what they have achieved, and we publish this book every year. We have published the report for 2019 as well. When we take a look at this report, when we take a look at specific countries, we can see that everybody has a lot more to do. I would like to thank you, our participants here, and I would like to thank our panelists for sharing their very valuable knowledge with us. Thank you very much for being here. I hope to see you next year. Bye.